The Isolated Colony. The year was 2150, and the Horizon Colony was a small outpost, tucked away on the far edge of the galaxy. Its people had been isolated for decades, far from the bustling activity of Earth and the other colonies. No one had heard from them in years. The messages they sent to Earth had gone unanswered, and each passing year felt like a step further into oblivion. Their supplies were running low, and their hope was even lower. Captain Alina Wells stood at the observation deck of the Horizon Colony, staring out into the endless black of space. The stars, distant and cold, seemed to mock her. It was hard to believe that, not so long ago, Earth had been a place of endless possibilities. Now it felt like a dream long forgotten, a place that had abandoned them. The colony was built on a small planet, one that had enough resources to survive, but not enough to thrive. It was barren, with harsh winds and rocky plains. The colony had started strong, a symbol of humanity's reach into the stars. But over time, as Earth became more distant, the support slowed. Ships stopped coming. Messages stopped arriving. And Horizon, once a beacon of hope, had become a prison in the stars. Alina had taken command a few years ago, after the previous captain died under mysterious circumstances. Since then, she had done everything she could to keep the colony running. She had organized mining efforts, repaired the infrastructure, and tried to keep the morale of the people high. But now, even she could feel the weight of the years pressing down on her. The people were growing restless, the air thick with the feeling of impending doom. "Captain Wells," said Lieutenant Jace Harlan, walking up beside her. His face was grim, and his voice was laced with uncertainty. "We've had another failed transmission to Earth. It's been, what, 2 years now?" Alina didn't answer right away. Instead, she continued staring at the distant stars, lost in thought. "It's been too long, Jace," she said softly. "Too long for anyone to still be out there." Jace shifted uncomfortably. "But we still try, right? We can't give up hope." Alina finally turned to him, her face hard but tired. "I don't know if there's anything left to hope for. We've been sending messages out every day, and no one answers. I'm starting to think Earth is gone." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. They were truly alone in the universe. Horizon was all that was left of humanity in this corner of the galaxy. The thought sent a chill down Alina's spine. She had never let herself think it before, but now, the reality was sinking in. They were isolated, cut off from the rest of humanity. If something went wrong, if the supplies ran out, if the planet's resources failed, there would be no rescue. There would be no help. "Captain, there's a report from the Outer Rim," Jace said, breaking the silence. "It's strange." Alina raised an eyebrow. "Strange? How?" "Something's out there. It's not a natural phenomenon. It looks like a ship," Jace replied, his voice tight with a mix of hope and fear. "A ship," Alina repeated, her heart skipping a beat. "Are you sure?" Jace nodded. "We've been tracking it for a while now. It's coming closer." Alina's heart raced. Was this the help they had been waiting for? Could it be a rescue mission? Or was it something else? "How close is it?" she asked, already moving toward the control room. "Too close for comfort," Jace answered, following her. "If it's a threat, we'll be ready. But it could also be humanity. It could be from Earth." Alina felt a spark of hope light up inside her, quickly followed by doubt. They hadn't heard from Earth in so long. The chances of this being a rescue mission were slim. But the idea of seeing another human face, of hearing that voice from Earth, made her chest tighten with anticipation. Could this really be happening? They reached the control room, where the rest of the crew had gathered. The large screen showed the faint outline of the approaching ship. It was still a dot, but its unmistakable shape sent waves of hope through the room. There were no signs of distress, no signs of a fight. It was just there. Could it be a trap? Jace asked, his voice barely a whisper. Alina shook her head. I don't know, but we won't know unless we investigate. She gave the order to set a course toward the ship, and the crew moved with urgency. The air was thick with tension as the colony's engines powered up, pushing them closer to the unknown vessel. No one spoke. Everyone was too busy watching the ship on the screen, too consumed with the thought of what might be out there. Minutes passed like hours, and the distance between horizon and the ship began to shrink. The ship was unlike anything they had seen before. Large, old, yet strangely familiar. Its design was reminiscent of the early ships that had first brought humanity to the stars, but this one was far more advanced. As the ship grew larger on the screen, a sense of unease spread through the crew. It was clear that this wasn't just any ship. It was human. But what were they doing so far out in the galaxy? How had they survived all this time? And why had they not contacted Horizon sooner? Captain Alina stood silently, her mind racing with questions. She couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would change everything. For better or for worse, they would meet the mystery of the stars head-on. Prepare to make contact, she ordered. The crew worked quickly, readying the communication systems. But deep down, Alina knew that the answer to their questions might not be as simple as they hoped. Whatever lay ahead, the horizon of their lives was about to shift forever. The tension in the control room was palpable. Captain Alina Wells stood at the front, her gaze fixed on the large screen in front of her. The ship, still looming in the distance, grew larger with every passing minute. The crew worked quickly, coordinating the course and preparing for what could be the most important event in their lives. Captain, we're within range, Lieutenant Jace Harlan reported, his voice steady but tinged with excitement. We're receiving a weak signal, but we're getting something. Alina's heart skipped a beat. Put it through, she ordered, her voice firm. The crew scrambled to bring the signal up, and a crackling noise filled the room. The static was almost deafening, but through it, a voice emerged, faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. This is ship. I repeat, ship from Earth. If, hear me, respond. Alina could hardly believe what she was hearing. The voice sounded weak, like it had been traveling across space for a long time. But the words were clear enough. Earth. It had to be a ship from Earth. But why had they not heard from Earth in so long? Why were they so far out? Open the comms, Alina ordered, her hand hovering over the console. This is Captain Alina Wells of the Horizon Colony. We hear you. Can you confirm your location? What is your status? There was a long pause before the voice crackled back to life. Captain Wells, Horizon Colony. We've been searching. So long. Earth. Lost. Fleet. The transmission faded out, and for a moment, the room fell silent. Alina's mind raced. What did that mean? Earth was lost. Who was this ship, and why had they been searching for so long? What had happened to Earth? Can you re-establish the signal? Alina asked, her voice filled with urgency. We're trying, Captain, but the signal is too weak. One of the engineers replied, his fingers flying across the console. It's barely holding. Alina took a deep breath and made a decision. Prepare a shuttle. We're going to meet them. The crew turned to her, surprised by her boldness. Jace's eyes widened. Captain, are you sure? We don't know what's out there. It could be dangerous. Alina nodded, her face grim. We have no choice. We need answers. We need to know what happened to Earth. And if they are really from Earth, they're the only chance we have for survival. The room fell into a hushed silence as the crew prepared the shuttle for launch. Outside the windows of the control room, the massive ship continued to approach. It looked ancient, its hull weathered by time and space, but there was no mistaking the human-made design. This was a ship from Earth, or at least, what was left of Earth's fleet. The shuttle bay doors opened, and Alina, Jace, and a small team of engineers suited up and boarded the shuttle. The ship was ready, and the crew was more than prepared for whatever lay ahead. As the shuttle lifted off the ground, the Horizon colony's remaining hope rested on what they would find. The journey through space to the massive vessel took only a few minutes, but it felt like hours. Every small shake of the shuttle, every flicker of the control panel made the crew jump. They were about to encounter something unknown, something they couldn't prepare for. As they drew closer, the silhouette of the ship became clearer. It was enormous, much larger than Horizon, and its surface was covered in strange markings and scars. It looked old, older than any ship they had ever seen. Yet there was something unsettlingly familiar about it. The more Alina stared, the more she realized that this ship was no ordinary craft. It was part of a fleet that had vanished without a trace, a fleet that should have been lost to history. The shuttle docked with a low, grinding sound. The doors slowly opened, revealing the interior of the strange ship. The lights were dim, and the air inside was stale, as if it hadn't been used in a long time. Alina and her team stepped cautiously inside, weapons drawn, eyes scanning the dark corridors. "We need to find the crew," Jace whispered, his voice barely audible in the silence. "If they're still alive." As they moved deeper into the ship, they encountered signs of a once thriving crew. There were old crew quarters, abandoned control rooms, and storage areas that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. Yet there was no sign of the people who had once lived and worked here. No bodies, no clues. Finally, they reached the heart of the ship, a large command center with a broken command chair at its center. Alina could see the remnants of a once powerful fleet, but it was all in ruins. It looked like the ship had been deserted for a long time. "Captain," Jace said, his voice low, "there's something here. Look at this." He pointed to a strange, blinking console at the far side of the room. It was ancient, covered in dust, but still operational. A series of coordinates were displayed on the screen, and Alina's eyes widened as she recognized the destination. "Earth," she whispered. "But why would they leave Earth? Why would they abandon their home?" Before anyone could answer, a sudden noise echoed from the dark hallways behind them. Footsteps. Someone, or something, was approaching. The crew froze, their hands instinctively reaching for their weapons. Alina's heart raced as the footsteps grew louder, closer. Who was it? What had happened to the crew? And where were they now? As the shadows stretched and the footsteps grew louder, a figure appeared in the doorway. A figure clad in dark armor, their face hidden beneath a helmet. The figure stood still for a moment before stepping forward. "We've been waiting for you," the figure said, their voice unmistakably human but cold, robotic. Alina's breath caught in her throat. This was it. They weren't alone. The mystery of the fleet was about to unfold. The figure in the doorway stood still, the dim light casting eerie shadows across its form. It was clad in dark, worn armor, with intricate designs etched into the metal. The helmet obscured the face, but the voice that had spoken was unmistakably human. The entire crew froze, their hands tightening around their weapons. No one moved for what felt like an eternity. Captain Alina Wells, ever the leader, broke the silence. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. "What is this ship, and where are the rest of your people?" The armored figure did not immediately answer. Instead, it stepped into the command center, its heavy boots echoing on the metal floor. The crew's eyes followed the mysterious figure closely, every instinct warning them of the danger lurking in the unknown. "We are what's left," the figure finally spoke, its voice low and hollow. "The remnants of humanity, the ones who disappeared." Alina's mind raced. The remnants of humanity. Could it be true? Had Earth truly been abandoned, lost to time? And these people were the only survivors. And if they were human, why did they look so different? What had happened to them? "You disappeared," Lieutenant Jace Harlan asked, his voice trembling with disbelief. "But we thought. No one knew what happened. Earth was lost. We couldn't even reach you." The figure nodded slowly, lowering its head slightly as if remembering something painful. We were lost in time. The fleet, it was scattered across galaxies, across dimensions even. But we've returned, and we found you. The silence that followed was thick with confusion and awe. Alina's mind struggled to process what she had just heard. A fleet from Earth, lost for generations, somehow found their way back. But why? How had they managed to survive so long? And why were they only showing up now? What happened to Earth? Alina asked, the question hanging in the air like an accusation. Why did you leave? Where is everyone else? The figure turned toward a large viewport in the room. The stars outside twinkled peacefully, but inside, the atmosphere was heavy. It's gone, the figure said quietly. Destroyed, wiped from the galaxy by forces beyond our understanding. We tried to save it, but we couldn't. The fleet was our last hope, but the galaxy changed, Captain. We've been fighting to survive ever since. Alina felt a chill crawl down her spine. The thought of Earth, her home, destroyed, gone from the galaxy forever, seemed impossible. But this figure and the ship they had stumbled upon suggested otherwise. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning. What do you mean by fighting to survive? Alina asked, her voice laced with suspicion. The figure turned back toward them, its eyes glimmering beneath the helmet. We've had to adapt. The universe is a dangerous place. Those who would have wiped out Earth, they were only the beginning. We've fought battles. We've lost comrades. But we've also gained strength. And now we've come to find the rest of humanity. We've come to find you. The words hung in the air like an unanswered question. Alina's thoughts were in turmoil. The fleet, the last remnant of Earth, had returned, but their purpose wasn't clear. Were they here to rebuild? Or had something more sinister occurred? What's your mission now? Alina pressed. Why contact us now, after all this time? The figure's stance stiffened, its hands resting on the edge of the console. We've been searching, Captain. For years, we've been scouring the stars, trying to find the scattered remnants of humanity. Your colony, it was a faint signal, the only one we could trace. We've come to unite the survivors. The time of isolation is over. Alina looked around at her crew. The weight of the words hung heavy on their shoulders. It wasn't just a chance encounter. They weren't alone in the universe, and whatever had happened to Earth, whatever had left this fleet stranded and scattered, was still out there. And now, it was up to them to decide what came next. What do you want from us? Jace asked, his tone sharp with caution. The figure seemed to consider the question for a moment before stepping closer. We need your help. The galaxy is not the place it used to be. The old alliances have broken down. We are facing a new threat, one that could destroy what little is left of humanity. Alina's mind raced. A new threat. What could be more dangerous than the forces that had already obliterated Earth? What else could threaten humanity's survival now? We've been tracking the enemy for years, the figure continued. But we're not strong enough. We need more allies. We need a unified fleet, and you're the key. We've come to offer you a choice. Help us, and together, we can rebuild humanity. Refuse, and you will face the same fate as Earth. Alina swallowed hard. The weight of the decision, the future of humanity, seemed to rest on her shoulders. But there was no time to hesitate. She turned to her crew, her eyes scanning their faces. They were all in the same position. Uncertain, afraid, but resolute. They had been living in the shadow of the past, of a lost world. Now they had a chance to change the future. We'll help you, Alina said, her voice steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. We'll unite with you. Together, we'll rebuild what was lost. The figure nodded slowly, a sense of approval in the gesture. Then we have work to do. The war is far from over. And with that, the reunion of humanity began. It was the beginning of something new, something both terrifying and hopeful. But it was only the first step in a journey that would reshape the future of the galaxy itself. The days following their agreement passed in a blur of activity. Alina and her crew had little time to rest, as the mysterious fleet's officers guided them through their next steps. The isolated colony that Alina had once thought was all there was to humanity was now connected to a fleet that had survived for generations, scattered across the stars. The reality of their situation was beginning to sink in. Humanity's survival was in their hands, and their first task was to prepare for war. The warship, the Exodus, as the mysterious fleet called it, was a relic from a lost era. Though the technology was old, it was a weapon like no other. The entire ship was equipped with advanced energy shields, weapons capable of vaporizing entire fleets, and a propulsion system that allowed it to travel at speeds previously thought impossible. But despite its firepower, there were gaps in its capabilities, gaps that could only be filled by reinforcements. That's where Alina's colony came in. The Exodus was not the only ship in the fleet. There were thousands, each carrying its own stories of survival, loss, and victory. Some ships were massive, capable of holding entire armies and fleets. Others were smaller but no less deadly. The humans who had survived these years had become hardened, skilled fighters, warriors who had learned to survive by adapting to the harshest conditions the galaxy had to offer. "We need every able body," Captain Goran, the commander of the Exodus, told Alina one night as they stood on the bridge, overlooking the fleet. The stars seemed so distant, and yet so close in the vastness of space. The enemy we're facing, they won't stop until they wipe us out completely. They've already taken everything from us once. We can't let that happen again. Alina nodded. She could feel the weight of Goran's words pressing down on her. And she knew that this wasn't just a battle for survival. This was the fight for the future of humanity. "What do you need us to do?" she asked. Goran turned to face her, his eyes filled with a determination that matched her own. "First, we need to get to the Atlas system. It's a supply base we used to rely on, but it's been overtaken by the enemy. If we don't reclaim it, we'll be stuck here without the resources we need to fight." Alina was no stranger to battle. She had fought in skirmishes before, but this was different. They weren't just defending their home. They were fighting to reclaim everything that had been lost, everything that had been taken from them. Over the next few days, the crew of the Exodus worked tirelessly to prepare for their first major engagement. The soldiers trained, engineers worked around the clock to reinforce their ships, and the civilians began converting their colony's resources into weaponry. The once peaceful colony was now an active participant in the war for survival. The crew was eager, but there was an underlying sense of fear. They had no idea what the enemy would throw at them or if they could actually win. But they had no choice. Finally, the fleet was ready. The Exodus and its allied ships launched into hyperspace, their destination set for the Atlas system. As the stars stretched into lines of light and the ships raced forward, Alina stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. The journey was long, but it gave Alina time to think. How had they come to this point? How had humanity gone from being scattered across the stars to being united under one banner? It felt like a dream she wasn't sure she was ready to wake from. And yet, here she was, leading a new chapter for her people. After what seemed like an eternity, the fleet arrived at the Atlas system. The vastness of space stretched out before them, and the sight of the supply base, once a beacon of hope, now a fortress under enemy control, sent a chill down Alina's spine. The enemy ships were already in orbit, massive behemoths that dwarfed even the Exodus. Their dark, jagged shapes filled the sky, their weapons trained on the planet below. The Atlas system was their prize, and they would do anything to keep it. "It's worse than we thought," Goran said, his voice low. "We can't just rush in. We'll need a plan." Alina felt her heart race as she looked out at the enemy fleet. There was no going back now. The first battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and it would be up to her, Goran, and the rest of the fleet to find a way to win. As the battle preparations began, The crew of the Exodus gathered in the briefing room. Alina stood before them, trying to calm the nerves of the soldiers, engineers, and officers. They had no idea what was to come, but she did. This was their only chance, and she was ready to fight. "We fight for humanity," Alina said, her voice firm. "We fight for Earth. We fight for the future. Together, we can take back what was lost. Together, we will show the galaxy what humanity is capable of." The room erupted in applause, and for a brief moment, Alina felt the weight of their shared resolve. They were no longer just survivors. They were warriors, and they were going to take back the stars. With a deep breath, Alina turned to Goran. "Let's make them regret ever thinking they could defeat us." And with that, the battle for the Atlas system, and for the future of humanity, began. The days following their agreement passed in a blur of activity. Alina and her crew had little time to rest, as the mysterious fleet's officers guided them through their next steps. The isolated colony that Alina had once thought was all there was to humanity was now connected to a fleet that had survived for generations, scattered across the stars. The reality of their situation was beginning to sink in. Humanity's survival was in their hands, and their first task was to prepare for war. The warship, the Exodus, as the mysterious fleet called it, was a relic from a lost era. Though the technology was old, it was a weapon like no other. The entire ship was equipped with advanced energy shields, weapons capable of vaporizing entire fleets, and a propulsion system that allowed it to travel at speeds previously thought impossible. But despite its firepower, there were gaps in its capabilities, gaps that could only be filled by reinforcements. That's where Alina's colony came in. The Exodus was not the only ship in the fleet. There were thousands, each carrying its own stories of survival, loss, and victory. Some ships were massive, capable of holding entire armies and fleets. Others were smaller but no less deadly. The humans who had survived these years had become hardened, skilled fighters, warriors who had learned to survive by adapting to the harshest conditions the galaxy had to offer. "We need every able body," Captain Goran, the commander of the Exodus, told Alina one night as they stood on the bridge, overlooking the fleet. The stars seemed so distant, and yet so close in the vastness of space. "The enemy we're facing, they won't stop until they wipe us out completely. They've already taken everything from us once. We can't let that happen again." Alina nodded. She could feel the weight of Goran's words pressing down on her, and she knew that this wasn't just a battle for survival. This was the fight for the future of humanity. "What do you need us to do?" she asked. Goran turned to face her, his eyes filled with a determination that matched her own. "First, we need to get to the Atlas system. It's a supply base we used to rely on, but it's been overtaken by the enemy. If we don't reclaim it, we'll be stuck here without the resources we need to fight." Alina was no stranger to battle. She had fought in skirmishes before, but this was different. They weren't just defending their home. They were fighting to reclaim everything that had been lost, everything that had been taken from them. Over the next few days, the crew of the Exodus worked tirelessly to prepare for their first major engagement. The soldiers trained, engineers worked around the clock to reinforce their ships, and the civilians began converting their colony's resources into weaponry. The once peaceful colony was now an active participant in the war for survival. The crew was eager, but there was an underlying sense of fear. They had no idea what the enemy would throw at them, or if they could actually win. But they had no choice. Finally, the fleet was ready. The Exodus and its allied ships launched into hyperspace, their destination set for the Atlas system. As the stars stretched into lines of light and the ships raced forward, Alina stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. The journey was long, but it gave Alina time to think. How had they come to this point? How had humanity gone from being scattered across the stars to being united under one banner? It felt like a dream she wasn't sure she was ready to wake from. And yet, here she was, leading a new chapter for her people. After what seemed like an eternity, the fleet arrived at the Atlas system. The vastness of space stretched out before them, and the sight of the supply base, once a beacon of hope, now a fortress under enemy control, sent a chill down Alina's spine. The enemy ships were already in orbit, massive behemoths that dwarfed even the Exodus. Their dark, jagged shapes filled the sky, their weapons trained on the planet below. The Atlas system was their prize, and they would do anything to keep it. "It's worse than we thought," Goran said, his voice low. "We can't just rush in. We'll need a plan." Alina felt her heart race as she looked out at the enemy fleet. There was no going back now. The first battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and it would be up to her, Goran, and the rest of the fleet to find a way to win. The battle raged on, the asteroid field becoming more chaotic as both fleets clashed. Alina's eyes flicked back and forth, analyzing the enemy's movements. The larger ships seemed to be struggling with the field's obstacles, but the smaller fighters were closing in. They had to keep them away from the Exodus. "Get the interceptors to cover our flank," Alina ordered. "We can't let them surround us." The Exodus's interceptors surged into action, launching fast-moving fighters that darted around the battlefield, taking down enemy missiles before they could reach their target. The enemy's formation was beginning to fracture as their fighters scattered, trying to follow the Exodus and its allies through the treacherous asteroid field. Incoming from the left, Lieutenant Orin shouted, "We've got a new enemy class approaching fast." A massive dreadnought, a ship the size of a city, appeared from behind the asteroid field. Its guns began charging, ready to fire. Alina's eyes widened. This was the enemy's final trump card. They had to take it down before it could unleash its firepower. "All ships, concentrate fire on that dreadnought," Alina ordered. "We need to disable it before it opens fire." The Exodus and its allies coordinated their attack, focusing everything they had on the dreadnought. Plasma blasts and laser beams streaked across the sky, impacting the massive ship's shields. For a moment, it seemed like the shields might hold, but then, with a loud crack, they shattered under the barrage. The dreadnought's engines flared, and the ship veered off course, crashing into an asteroid as it lost control. "We've got it," Orin shouted in relief. Alina exhaled, her hands shaking slightly. The tide was beginning to turn in their favor, but the battle was far from over. The enemy had lost a significant ship, but there were still many more left. "Push forward," Alina shouted. "We've got them on the run. Now's our chance." With renewed determination, the fleet pressed forward, cutting through the remaining enemy ships with precision. The larger ships continued to struggle in the asteroid field, and one by one, they began to fall. The Exodus and its allies had given everything they had, and it was paying off. By the end of the battle, the Exodus's fleet had emerged victorious. The Atlas system had been reclaimed. The once overwhelming enemy fleet lay in ruins, and humanity's hope for survival had been given a second chance. But Alina knew this was just the beginning. The war was far from over, and more battles would come. But today they had proven something to the galaxy. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were fighting back, and they weren't going down without a fight. The victory in the Atlas system had been hard won, but the cost had been steep. The Exodus and its fleet had taken severe damage, and the crew was exhausted. Despite this, there was a sense of triumph hanging in the air. For the first time in years, humanity had fought back and won, proving they were not to be underestimated. Alina stood on the bridge, staring at the vast expanse of space. The stars twinkled in the distance, silent witnesses to the battle that had just unfolded. Her mind was racing, trying to piece together everything that had happened. The enemy was powerful, but they had proven they could be defeated. "Commander, we're receiving an encrypted message," Lieutenant Orin called from his station. Alina turned to face him, her brow furrowed. "From who?" Orin's fingers flew across the controls. "It's coming from a ship just outside the system. It's not an enemy vessel." The signal strange, definitely not human. Alina's heart skipped a beat. Another alien faction. We've already got enough enemies. That's what I thought too, Oren replied, his voice filled with uncertainty. But the message, it's not hostile. They're asking for a meeting. Alina's mind raced. Who would be reaching out to them after such a bloody battle? And why now, of all times? She glanced around at her crew, all of them waiting for her decision. This could be a trap, but it could also be an opportunity they couldn't afford to ignore. Open a channel, Alina ordered. Let's see who we're dealing with. A moment later, the face of an alien appeared on the screen. The creature was humanoid, but with features that were far from human. Its skin was a pale shade of blue, its eyes glowing an eerie green. Its voice was calm and measured as it spoke. Commander Alina, I am Captain Toren of the Sovra, a ship of the Trailan fleet. I represent a faction that has been monitoring your people for some time. We have been observing your conflict with the Empire. I believe it is time for us to discuss an alliance. The silence on the bridge was deafening. An alliance with an alien species they knew nothing about. Why should we trust you? Alina asked, her voice steady despite the unease she felt. We've fought for our survival against alien forces. Why now, after all this time? Captain Toren's expression remained unreadable, but there was a glimmer of sincerity in his eyes. We have seen the strength of your people, Commander. You are resilient, and your resolve is something we respect. The Empire you fight against is a threat to us as well. We have no love for them, and we believe it is in both our interests to join forces. Alina felt the weight of the situation settle in her chest. This was an unexpected development. The Empire had many enemies, but no one had ever come forward to openly oppose them in such a way. Could they trust this strange new ally? And what would it mean for humanity? I'll need more information, Alina replied, her voice calm but firm. You say you've been monitoring us. Why haven't you offered help before? The alien's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't flinch. We were waiting for the right moment. We needed to see if your species had the will to survive, the will to fight back against the Empire. Now that we've seen that you do, we are ready to offer our assistance. Alina took a deep breath, trying to process the situation. It was risky, far too risky to make a decision without knowing more. But in the midst of the war, could they afford not to consider this? They had just won a crucial battle, but the Empire was still out there, more powerful than ever. I'll need to speak with my officers, Alina said. We'll consider your offer, but we'll make no promises until we've had time to evaluate the situation. Of course, Commander, Captain Toren said, his voice tinged with respect. We are in no hurry. We will await your decision. The screen went black, and Alina stood silently for a moment, contemplating the conversation. Her crew waited expectantly, eager for her next command. Commander, Goran said, stepping forward, this is a risky move. We don't know anything about these aliens. What if they're just trying to manipulate us? I know, Alina replied, but we can't afford to be paranoid. We've seen what the Empire is capable of. If there's a chance that these people can help us, we need to consider it. But what if they have their own agenda? Goran pressed. What if they want to use us as pawns? Then we'll have to be careful, Alina said, her voice resolute. But if they're offering us a chance at a true alliance, we'll take it. Humanity isn't going to survive by playing it safe anymore. The room fell quiet, the weight of her words sinking in. Alina knew the road ahead was fraught with danger, but she also knew that humanity had no choice but to take risks. If they didn't, they might never see another victory. Set course for the Trailan fleet, Alina ordered, her voice firm. We'll meet them on neutral ground. Prepare for all contingencies. The crew sprang into action, the hum of the engines filling the room as the Exodus changed course. The fate of humanity was now in their hands, and the decisions they made would shape the future of the galaxy. As the ship moved toward the unknown, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting, this unexpected alliance, could either be their salvation or their doom. The Exodus drifted through the vast emptiness of space, heading towards the coordinates provided by Captain Toran. Alina stood at the command station, her eyes fixed on the stars outside the ship's window. The quiet hum of the engines was almost comforting, but she couldn't shake the unease building in her chest. An alliance with these Trailan aliens was a risk. Could they really be trusted? Or was this a trap designed to manipulate humanity for their own gain? Her mind wandered back to the conversation with Toran. He had been sincere, calm, and patient, but his people had stayed hidden for so long. Why now? Why, after all these years, had they decided to reveal themselves? Alina had her doubts, but the battle with the Empire was far from over. She needed every advantage they could get. "Commander," Lieutenant Oren spoke, breaking her thoughts. "We've reached the rendezvous point. The Trailan fleet is in sight." Alina took a deep breath and turned toward the view screen. A massive fleet of ships, unlike anything she had seen before, appeared before them. Their sleek silver hulls gleamed against the backdrop of space, an array of vessels that seemed to stretch for miles. The ships were unlike the crude designs of the Empire or the familiar human ships she knew. These were far more advanced. A sharp ping echoed in the quiet of the bridge, and Oren's fingers flew across his console. "We're being hailed, Commander," he said. "Open the channel." Alina replied, her heart racing. This was it, the moment that could change everything for humanity. The screen flickered, and once again, Captain Toran's face appeared. His expression was calm, but there was a glint of anticipation in his eyes. "Commander Alina," he greeted, his voice steady. "I'm glad to see you've arrived. We're ready to discuss our potential alliance." Alina nodded, trying to mask the nervous energy swirling inside her. "Let's get down to business. What exactly do you want from us, and why should we trust you after all this time?" Toran's expression remained neutral, but there was a slight shift in his posture. "I understand your caution, Commander. Your people have every right to be suspicious. But I assure you, we have no ulterior motives. Our goal is simple: to defeat the Empire and restore balance to the galaxy." Alina's eyes narrowed. "And how exactly do you plan to do that? You say you've been watching us, but you've done nothing to help. Why now?" Toran's gaze was unwavering. "We have our reasons for staying hidden, but we know the Empire's strength, and we understand the threat they pose to all of us. The time has come for action. Together, we can strike at the heart of the Empire, weaken their forces, and hopefully bring an end to their reign of terror." Alina felt the weight of his words. The Empire had already destroyed so much, and humanity was running out of time. Their fleets were outgunned, and their resources stretched thin. If this Trailan fleet was truly as powerful as it seemed, it could tip the scales in their favor. "What exactly are you offering?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Toran's lips curled into a faint smile. "We offer advanced technology, tactical support, and strategic guidance. Our fleets are equipped with weapons that even the Empire fears. But most importantly, we offer our knowledge. The Trailan have fought the Empire for centuries, and we have learned much in that time." Alina's mind raced. Weapons that could rival the Empire's. Knowledge from a species that had been fighting this war for centuries. It was almost too good to be true. She had to know more. "And what do you want in return?" she asked, her voice cautious. Toran's gaze hardened slightly. "All we ask is your cooperation. We need your fleet's strength, your resolve, and your people's determination. Together, we can accomplish what neither of us could do alone." Alina looked out at the Trailan ships once more, their sleek forms glowing softly in the dark void of space. The decision before her was monumental. If they accepted this alliance, humanity would enter uncharted territory. There would be risks, unknown dangers, but there could also be rewards. "I'll need to consult with my officers," Alina said, her voice firm. "We can't make this decision lightly." "Of course," Toran replied. "Take all the time you need. But know this, we do not have the luxury of time. The Empire grows stronger with each passing day. We must act swiftly if we are to succeed. The screen went black, and Alina turned to her crew. They had come so far, but this was different. This wasn't just another battle. It was a decision that could define the future of humanity. She could feel the weight of her crew's eyes on her, waiting for her to speak, waiting for her command. She had always led with confidence, but this was different. This time, the stakes were higher than ever. I know many of you are wary, Alina began, her voice steady. I am too, but we cannot ignore the reality. The Empire is too strong for us to defeat alone. This may be our best chance at survival. We have to decide if we are willing to take the risk. Goran stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. Commander, we fought alone for so long. Maybe it's time we trusted someone else. I agree, Orin added. We've fought side by side with the humans, but we're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for freedom. If these aliens truly want to help, then maybe we should take the chance. The decision was made. Alina nodded, her mind already focusing on the next steps. Prepare for the alliance, she said firmly. We meet with the Trilon fleet tomorrow. Get ready, everyone. We're about to change the course of this war. The Exodus shifted course, heading towards the Trilon fleet. Alina stood at the front of the bridge, her heart racing, knowing that humanity's future was about to take a bold and uncertain turn. As the ship moved toward the unknown, Alina couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of a new chapter for humanity, or would this alliance lead to their destruction? Only time would tell.